You freeze in conversations. It's probably not because you don't know what to say. It's because you're monitoring yourself at the exact moment you need access to your brain. And those two things can't happen at the same time. There's a specific kind of frustration that a lot of intelligent people carry around and almost never talk about. Someone asks you a question in a meeting, a question you definitely know the answers to, and your brain just drops the file. You feel your face go slightly strange and you're suddenly aware of every person in the room, and the silence starts to feel like it has weight. And now you're thinking about the silence instead of the answer, and the whole thing gets worse by the second. Or are you in a conversation with someone you want to connect with, and you feel yourself watching yourself like you're on a trial, evaluating every sentence before you say it? Nothing feels good enough, so nothing comes out. This is what freezing actually feels like from the inside, and if it happens to you, I want to say something clearly at the start of this video. It is not because you're slow. It is not because you're boring. And it is not a personality flaw you were born with. It is a predictable performance effect, one that researchers actually understand pretty well. And once you understand what's driving it, you can interrupt it. And that's what this video is about. So let's start with the mechanics because they're worth understanding. When you're in a high stake conversation, or even a conversation that just feels high stake, your brain registers it as a social evaluative threat. Someone is forming an opinion of you right now. There are consequences to getting this wrong. And your nervous system, which doesn't distinguish very cleanly between being judged in a meeting and being threatened physically, starts to respond accordingly. One of the first things that happens is that your attention turns inward. You stop listening as closely to the other person. You start monitoring yourself, your voice, your words, your face, and how you're coming across. Researchers call this self-focused attention, and there's a real body of work showing that it's one of the main things that makes conversations go badly under pressure. And here's the thing that makes it worse. The part of your brain that's managing the conversation, planning what to say, retrieving the right words, keeping track of the thread, that's all working memory. It's a limited system. There's only so much it can hold at once, and anxiety fills it with noise. Worry, monitoring, self evaluation, all of that competes for space with the actual thinking you need to do. So you end up in this loop. Social pressure increases anxiety, anxiety increases self monitoring, and then self monitoring eats up cognitive resources, and now you don't have the mental bandwidth left to actually formulate a sentence. And the loop feeds itself. This is not a mystery, and it is not a character flaw. This is a well documented pressure effect that happens to people who are frankly cognitively active enough to get stuck in it. The people who overthink are often the people who think carefully in the first place. The monitoring that's consuming your working memory is the same monitoring that usually makes you a precise, thoughtful speaker. Under pressure, it just fires too hard. Understand that doesn't fix on its own, but it does remove the shame, and removing the shame is the first step toward actually doing something about it. Before I give you what does work, I want to briefly address what most people try, because if you have tried these things and they haven't helped, there's a reason. The most common instinct when you freeze is to try harder, to push for the right answer, to generate more mental materials and scan it faster until the right words appear. The problem is that this increases cognitive load, not decreases it. You are adding more to an already overloaded system. It almost always makes things worse. Another common pattern is what researchers call safety behaviors. These are the things you do to protect yourself from the feared outcome, mentally rehearsing the perfect sentence, over explaining to cover all angles, scripting conversation in advance, avoiding eye contact so you can think. These feel like they should help. They feel like preparation or protection, but the research is fairly consistent. Safety behaviors tend to maintain anxiety over time rather than reduce it. They are a way of managing the fear without ever disconfirming it, and in the moment, they increase the internal load instead of freeing it up for you. Third failed approach is waiting to feel calm before you speak. If you just give yourself a moment, the anxiety will pass and the words will come. Sometimes this works, but waiting often becomes avoidance. And avoidance confirms to your brain that the situation was actually dangerous, which makes it worse next time. What actually works is a bit counterintuitive. You're not trying to solve the anxiety first. You are trying to interrupt the loop. So I want to give you a 4-step reset that you can use in the moment, in any conversation where you feel yourself going blank or getting stuck. And it's called pace. Not because you need to slow down dramatically, but because it gives you a sequence to move through when you don't know what to do next. First, E is for pause. The first move is to stop trying to think while you are talking. Just stop. Take one slow exhale, longer out than in. Keep your face neutral. You're not apologizing. You're not performing composure. You're just taking one breath. If there's someone in front of you, you can say something like, "Please give me 1 second, or let me think for a moment." That's not weakness. That's someone who knows how to manage their own process. The slow exhale matters physiologically. Even a brief shift towards slower breathing can reduce state anxiety in ways that are measurable. It creates a small gap in the loop, which is all you need to start the next step. A is for aim. Here's where most people go wrong when they try to recover from a freeze. They try to recover too much. They want the full answer, the perfect response, the complete thought. But working memory is still limited. Anxiety is still in the room. Trying to retrieve a complex response from an overloaded system is not going to work. Instead, pick one thing. Ask yourself one question. What do I want them to know or do after my next sentence? Not my next 5 sentences, my next sentence. If your mind is totally blank, you have 3 defaults you can always fall back on. Ask a clarifying question. State one fact you know for certain, or name the decision you are trying to make together. Any of those is enough. C is for connect. This is the most important step, and it's the one that directly interrupts the anxiety loop. Move your attention from yourself to the other person or to the shared task. Look at them. Really look at them. Recall the last few words they said. Listen for what they actually want to know. Ask for a clarifying question if one comes naturally. What you're doing here is deliberately reducing self-focused attention. Research on social anxiety shows that shifting from internal monitoring to external engagement is one of the most reliable, helpful things you can do in a conversation that's going badly. Not because external focus is the magic trick, but because your attention has limited supply and self-monitoring and external engagement generally compete for it. When you move from one inward, you lose the other. And as part of connecting, drop one safety behavior. If you're mentally rehearsing the perfect sentence right now, stop. If you're scanning for errors, stop. You don't need to abandon all judgment. You just need to reduce the internal overhead enough that there's room for actual speech. And finally, E is for express. One sentence, that's it. One breath worth of words, then stop. Use one of these if you meet a template. My main point is to, or what I mean is, or if you are in a disagreement. I see the logic, but I'm concerned about, or hand off with a question. What matters most to you here? Timeline or scope? Brief fillers are fine. An or a repair phrase like, let me put that differently. These are not signs of incompetence. There's interesting linguistic research showing that people use and as meaningful signals that they are holding the floor in thinking. Listeners understand this. What actually undermines trust is not the pause, it's the panic that comes after the pause. When you deliver one clear sentence at the end of the pause disappears. To put it all together, pause, aim, connect, and express. 4 steps, anywhere from 5 to 15 seconds. The challenge with any in-the-moment protocol is that you have to be able to run it automatically under pressure, which means that you have to practice it before the pressure arrives. And here are a few ways to build the reflex. In low-stakes conversations this week, with a cashier, a coworker, or a friend, practice the exhale before you speak. Not every time, just sometimes. You're training your nervous system to associate someone's attention is on me with I take a breath instead of I brace. Before your next meeting or conversation that might be uncomfortable, compress your main point into 7 words. Not a paragraph, not a list of possible things you might say. 7 words. I think we should delay the launch. My concern is the timeline assumptions. I want to understand your main constraint. This is working memory friendly. It gives you something small and manageable to load up before the conversation starts. During conversations, practice the external anchor. When you feel yourself turning inward, noticing your own voice, evaluating your sentences, consciously bringing your attention back to the other person. What did they just say? What are they trying to figure out? What do they actually need from you right now? It sounds simple. It is simple. The simple is useful. And once a week, pick one safety behavior and intentionally drop it in a conversation. If you normally over prepare, go in with less preparation and see what actually happens. If you easily avoid eye contact, maintain it for longer and notice whether the feared outcome arrives. The goal of this isn't exposure therapy. You're just starting to gather evidence about whether your anxiety's predictions are actually accurate, and usually they're not. I want to end with something that I think is worth sitting with. A lot of people who struggle most with freezing in conversations are people who care deeply about communicating well. The monitoring isn't random, it comes from wanting to get it right, from understanding that words matter and how you perceive matters, and that the conversation in front of you has some weight to it. That quality, the part of you that wants to speak carefully and clearly and honestly, that's not a problem. The problem is when the protective system that's trying to serve that quality gets activated at the wrong level, in the wrong direction, and ends up working against you. Haste isn't about turning that off, it's about redirecting it. Pause, give the system a moment to downshift. Aim, give it one manageable target. Connect, put its attention somewhere useful. Express, and trust that the one honest, clear sentence is enough. You don't need perfect words, you need a clear next sentence. And that's the whole thing. When you feel freeze coming, don't reach for brilliance. Just find your next sentence, and that's enough to get you back to where you are.